Hello and welcome to the class. My name is Daniel, and today we're going to be looking at fluency and coherence and pronunciation. If you have a question after the class, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. This is the second of two classes and will last just over 20 minutes. First, we're going to talk about pronunciation, and then we're going to see some tips on how to improve it. So by the end of the session, you'll be more aware of how this affects your speaking marks. During the class, there'll be questions for you to answer. These will appear below the video. I'll tell you when you need to answer them, and I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds for each one. Okay, so let's start by looking at what pronunciation is. Well, pronunciation is the way you say words and sentences, essentially. So we're going to see the actual marking criteria that the examiner uses to mark your speaking. So it looks like this, and you can see here that it goes from band 9, and here it's going to 6. It actually goes to 0. 0 is the lowest, and 9 is the highest. We're just going to focus on 6 to 9. And we're going to look at some of the things that come up in this. So you can see the first thing that comes up is it talks about pronunciation features. Pronunciation features. And again here, pronunciation features. 7, by the way, takes ideas from here and from here and is a mix of the two. But pronunciation features we're going to see in the coming slide. It's different things connected to pronunciation. Now, depending how many of them you show gives you a higher or lower mark. So look here, it says uses a range of pronunciation features with mixed control. So sometimes you can control them, sometimes you can't control them. If you make some pronunciation mistakes with these features, you're going to get something around a 6. If you make lots and lots of mistakes with pronunciation, you're going to get a much lower mark. Now here it says you use a full range of pronunciation features with precision and subtlety. So that's almost like a native speaker. You couldn't necessarily tell the difference. Whereas here it says a wide range. Now we're going to look at exactly what we mean by pronunciation features in a moment. Another thing that it talks about is how easy you are to understand. So it talks about understanding here. So easy to understand, effortless to understand is the difference here. So effortless, the person listening doesn't need to try. Whereas here, easy, maybe they need to try a little bit. And it talks about your L1 accent. So that's L1 is your first language or your mother tongue. Has a minimal effect on intelligibility. This is another key word. Intelligibility means can the person listening understand what you're saying? And again, here we can see that it talks about mispronunciation of individual words or sounds reduce clarity. So reducing clarity means it's making it hard to understand. So it's all about how well you can be understood or how intelligible you are. So let's just summarize those. So we've got pronunciation features, as I said, we're going to look at in a moment, and intelligibility is the other thing that we also want to talk about. So let's take a look at some of these pronunciation features or features of pronunciation. Well, the first one that we usually start with is phonemes, and phonemes are the little individual sounds in a word. So the word hat is made from 3 phonemes. H, ah, t. 3 phonemes, hat. We can see the difference between hat and hot is nearly the same, but there's just one phoneme different. Hat, ah, and hot, oh. So those 2 phonemes are different. Again, the difference between hit and heat is just I and E. So there's just one phoneme difference. Now, depending what language you speak, you might find some English phonemes difficult to say because maybe you don't have the phoneme in your language. And some 2 phonemes might sound the same. So like bat and pat. For some nationalities, those two words sound exactly the same, but in English, they're two different sounds, b and p. So it's important to be able to recognize what's difficult for you and to try and improve the ones that are. Again, here's another example, very and berry. Just the first phoneme, v and b, are different. Another pronunciation feature would be word stress. Now, when we talk about word stress, we mean we're looking at one word. For example, we could say technology, and we want to say what is the strongest part or strongest syllable in that word. So technology has 4 syllables, and the stressed one is the second one. So we go technology. So the second syllable is the stressed syllable in technology. Also, we have this word here. We made good progress. Here, this is the stressed syllable, progress, because it's a noun form. Whereas here we'd say, I'm progressing well, progressing well. So the gre is the strong syllable in that, or the stressed syllable in that. And that's because it's a verb. So being able to hear and produce these word stresses correctly also will get you better marks in the IELTS speaking. Another pronunciation feature is weak forms. What we mean by weak forms is when we have a stressed syllable, one of the other syllables, like here, is not pronounced pro. You don't say I'm progressing well. You say I'm progressing. You make this sound So you change the normal sound of that part of the word and you make it weaker. So it goes from pro to progressing, not progressing. So that's what we mean by weak forms. Another thing is sentence stress. So whereas we said word stress was the strongest part of a word, sentence stress are the strongest words in a sentence, or parts of words in a sentence. So here we'd probably say, I hardly ever take the bus to school. So we say, hardly ever take the bus to school. Those 4 words are all strong words or stressed words. So you'd say, I hardly ever take the bus to school. I hardly ever take the bus to school. They're the strong words in that sentence. And that's what we mean by sentence stress. So that's another pronunciation feature. Another thing is intonation. And intonation is the way your voice changes when you're saying a sentence to try to change the meanings. So you could say this sentence here. You could say, you're James, aren't you? Aren't you? And your voice is falling in that situation. Or you could say, you're James, aren't you? Now it changes the meaning. We're not really going to look at that right now, but this is what we mean by intonation. You could have falling intonation, aren't you? And you could have rising intonation, aren't you? So that's what we mean by intonation, and that's another feature of pronunciation. Linking is another pronunciation feature. So this is where you say, have you got it all? These 3 words, got it all. You don't say got it all. They all connect together. You say got it all, got it all, got it all. They connect and make nearly, it sounds like one word. We call this linking. It usually happens when you have a consonant followed by a vowel. Those two connect together. So got it all, got it all. And we call that linking. And again, native speakers are linking their words together all the time, which is why listening can be so difficult for language learners. Another one we have is assimilation. It's this bit here where you say, have you seen Bob? Is where one of the sounds changes because of another sound that comes after it. So here we've got the B in Bob and the N in seen. Now, normally when I say the word seen, it's an N sound. But when it's followed by a B, it changes to an M sound. So have you seen Bob? If I say it quickly, it would be have you seen Bob? So it changes from an N to an M. And this we call assimilation. And then one more is elision. He lives next door. Now, this T in this sentence, if you listen for it, he lives next door. There's no T. I wouldn't say he lives next door. Next door. No one says that. You delete the T sound. And it's very common when you have T sounds at the end of words and then another consonant after them. So it's next door, next door. It's not next door. So we call that elision. So these are the features of pronunciation. Now, we're going to have a little bit of practice and we're going to go through each one of these. So what I'd like you to do is look at the question below the video and see if you can match up this first sentence to one of these features of pronunciation. I'm going to give you 10 to 15 seconds to try that. Okay, well, this first one, he's a quiet boy. He's a quiet boy. This is an example of assimilation. So where the sound T and B sort of merge together to make a different sound. So it's not quiet boy, you'd say quiet boy, quiet boy. So it's more like a P sound than anything. So that's an example of assimilation. Now look at the next question below the video and try to do the same for this second sentence. Okay, well here if I say I get up at 7 o'clock, you don't say get up at, it's get up at, get up at, get up at. It all connects together. Those three words become one word. So this is an example of linking because the words link together. So I get up at 7 o'clock. Now try number 3 below the video. Okay, so this pan or this pen, just one sound different. This is an example of phonemes. So this pan doesn't work, this pen doesn't work. You can see how if you don't pronounce the phoneme correctly, it can change the meaning of the sentence. And sometimes that can be confusing for someone listening. So that's a reason to understand how to get phonemes correct. Okay. Now look at number 4 below the video and see if you can choose the correct option. Okay, well that one, they donated money to charity. That's looking at sentence stress. So these are the strong words or syllables in the sentence. So they donated money to charity. Those are the 3 strong parts or stressed parts of the sentence. Now look at number 5 and try to do the same. Okay, well, this is just one word, but it's got two strong parts. Information. Information. We can see that that one is about word stress. So not sentence stress, because that looks at a whole sentence, but word stress. Information. Now look at number 6 and try to do the same again. Okay, so if I say this quickly, I look back over my notes. This ed disappears. So you don't go, I looked back over my notes. You go, I look back. So this is an example of elision, where the ed, it disappears, gets deleted. Okay, now look at number 7 and see if you can do the same for that. Okay, well, this, depending how we say it, you can say, he said what? Or he said what? So depending how you say it, it can change the meaning. This is an example of intonation. Okay, so well, we're just left with one left. So computer, pronounced computer. So these are examples of weak forms. You don't say computer. No one says that. You say computer. Then that's showing these weakened forms of the syllables. Now let's talk a little bit about intelligibility, because that was another thing that appeared in the marking criteria. So what does it mean exactly? Well, intelligibility is a word which means how well another person can understand what you are saying. If they can understand you, you would say you are intelligible. What can affect intelligibility? Well, a slight accent doesn't affect it. If you have a bit of an accent from your native language, from your L1, that is totally fine. I have an accent. I'm from Manchester in the north of England, and I have a bit of an accent. Lots of people around England have accents, but I can still understand everyone else. If someone's from Scotland, or someone's from Canada, or someone's from the United States, when I speak to them, I can still understand them, but I can hear that they have an accent. So a slight accent is not a problem at all. And you will not be marked down because you have a slight accent. So you don't have to speak like an English person to get a good mark on the IELTS speaking. But a strong accent, a very, very strong accent, where it makes it confusing to understand, that will lose you marks because you won't be intelligible. Also, mistakes with the features of pronunciation are another thing. So particularly for native speakers, if the word or the sentence stress is not correct, it can be really difficult to understand. So trying to work on those, make sure you're familiar with any mistakes that you make and trying to correct them. So these are things that can affect intelligibility. So let's look at some ways that you could improve your pronunciation. Well, the first thing you could do is listen to lots of English, like TV, podcasts, online practice, that kind of thing. The more you hear, the more familiar you'll become with the sounds of English. You could copy yourself, or copy someone on the television, or copy someone doing a presentation. So you listen to them do it, and then you try to copy them and record yourself on your phone or your computer, and then listen back to compare the two. That's a really good way of seeing what mistakes you make compared to a native speaker. Watch people's mouths. When a teacher is teaching you how to say a word, focus on their mouth. The mouth is a muscle. It needs to be exercised. And first, you need to know how to exercise it, how to move it in the correct way. Another good way to do that is to get a mirror and look at your own mouth. Or you don't even need a mirror now. If you have a phone that has a front directional camera, you can just film yourself and try to say words and watch your own mouth. So you could watch someone saying it, and then you could try to copy them and move your mouth in the same way as them. Even if your teacher is telling you, okay, your tongue is at the back of your mouth, sometimes you could put your finger in your mouth and feel where your tongue is. Try to get more familiar with the muscles of your mouth and tongue. This is certainly a way you can improve your pronunciation. This is really important. Learn your own common mistakes. What do you make mistakes with all the time? If you recognize it, you can then start to correct it. So if your teacher corrects your pronunciation, make a note of what they corrected you on and keep a record and try to improve that. Repetition is essential. So as I said before, your mouth and tongues use muscles to move. It's like if you go to the gym, the first time it's very difficult. Or if you start swimming or start running, the first time you do it, it's really, really difficult. The only way to get better is to exercise the muscles in the correct way. So you have to repeat the activity again and again and again and again, and you will get better at it. Be patient. I've been speaking English for 36 years. That's why I can do it very well. If you've only been speaking 1 or 2 or 5 years and you haven't done it that much, obviously your pronunciation is not going to be amazing at the very beginning. You need to exercise the muscles. You need to practice them. That takes a very long time. So please be patient. Okay, if you have any questions, remember you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. Now remember to do the online training and extra practice activities. Thank you so much for coming to the class. We'll see you again. Goodbye.